going to talk about Buddhism in tea. It says history, cognition, and biochemistry. These are very broad topics. I'm going to have to only touch upon them briefly. This picture is a temple garden in Japan, and that already situates the talk a bit in time and space, because Japan is a very important key to this talk. As Buddhists, we can think that we try to gain consciousness of the eternal now, in which all of the past and all of the futures are encapsulated in this present moment. Closer to my mouth. I'll do that. And so, as Buddhists, we're trying to be conscious of this eternal now. And from a philosophical perspective, perhaps everything is encapsulated in this eternal now. Even as physicists, this perspective might be correct. But from the point of view of a historian, we need flat time and chronology. So here we have a picture of a beautiful statue, and this statue too is in Japan. But it is from the Gandharan civilization, which flourished from the 1st century BC to the 3rd century AD, and it is in the National Museum at Ueno, in the north part of the Yamanote line in Tokyo, and it is of course, a statue that was made several centuries after the Buddha. So for historians, you need a flat line, and you need to have a chronology, and you have to know what happens first and what happens second. Here you see the name of Prince Siddhartha Gautama in Brahmi script, and the Brahmi script was used in the Ashoka inscriptions, in epigraphy, and of course only came into existence centuries after the Buddha had gone away. Siddhartha Gautama in Sanskrit, and here we see the oldest manuscripts from the Indian subcontinent, the oldest. They are written in the Gandhari language, and they are written in the Kharoshthi script, and they are Buddhist texts from the Dharmakuptaka school of Buddhism that flourished in the Gandharan civilization. So we see a chronology, we see an unfolding. And if you are adherents of Buddhism and you love Buddhism, one should be interested also in the history of Buddhism, which is extremely fascinating. So Buddhist teachings were already very old by the time that they reached the city of Lucknow, as that city was named, and as the name of the city was probably pronounced in the 2nd century AD, Goya. And that is when the first translators, Parthian translators, Indo-Scythian translators, translated Buddhist texts into Chinese. So there is a chronology of Buddhism. So when you read in the abstract that the relationship between Buddhism and tea is antique, it's antique, but it's not this old. You see? And Buddhism came to China. Tea also came to China, which means it was not there first. Here we see the original tea homeland, and this encircled geographical area. We know that from the distribution of all the species closely related to tea, and also from the population genetics of the tea plants itself and the various cultivars. None of that area lies within historical China, which is, of course, further to the right on this map. And it is in this area where tea was first consumed, and tea was first not consumed as a drink. It was consumed as something that you ate. You ate tea. Even the oldest finds, archaeological finds later during the Han Dynasty in China, are in the same way the Austroasiatic peoples used the tea. You ate it and you mixed it with grains, and you would put it in funerary objects. And so you find them in funerary objects, but rarely, because it was not very popular in China in the Han Dynasty. It was only, they had only gained familiarity with it. And here you see Nyam, even the word, it's Thai, but it's not a Khaldai root, it's an Austroasiatic root. You have the same word in Chinese, but it is an Austroasiatic root. It's wet, you chew on it, and you eat it. You eat the tea. Here is the pet from Burma. It's also tea that you eat and chew. So this is how tea was originally consumed by Austroasiatic peoples in the tea homeland, and how, after a long time, it reached China. And it only reached China really as a drink during the Eastern Jin dynasty, 3rd, 4th century. And it was at this time that people started using it not only as a medicine, it was usually added with soups. You would add garlic and onion and orange peel and all sorts of things and eat it as a soup. But only later would you drink it as a pure beverage, and those people were Buddhist monks who used it to keep awake during the Jin dynasty. And this here you see Bodhidharma. You see his name written in the Gupta script at the top, which is of course very nice because all of us who are familiar with the script used here in Bhutan, this Gupta script served as the inspiration to Tumisungata to devise the original Tibetan script, which was phonologically perfect at the time that he devised it for the language as it was spoken then, and you can see the relationship. Bodhidharma came from the Bauta kingdom, which was in the south of India. He may have been a Tamil. There are traditions that say that he was a Tamil, or Tamil prince, or a Brahmin mendicant, and others say, other traditions, particularly in Japan, say that he was from the western regions, from Gandhara, and then went through the Pallava kingdom, and then across the sea to southern China. And he landed in southern China around 475 AD. 15 years later, approximately, he went to Luoyang, or Luoyang, the capital then of China, and he stayed there until he died. And he was very fond of tea, as many of the monks were, and he discovered this, of course, in China, being used by the monks at that time. He was trying to concentrate during meditation. He could not concentrate and stay awake, so he cut off his eyelids and threw them on the ground, and they sprouted up into tea trees. I think this might not be historical. This is also, when practicing meditation, you might not want to have your eyes wide open, but this is to emphasize this legend, to emphasize the connection between him and tea. And he is the first preceptor of Zen. There are 6 very famous preceptors in the lineage, and then of course the very famous 6th Zen preceptor, and then Zen spread, and you have numerous lineages, and of course Zen moved across the sea to Japan. What is Zen? If I'm going to tell you what Zen is, then whatever I were to tell you, I'm reminded of when the Bodhisattva Manjushri tried to explain this elaborate exposition of Advaita and then he said to Vimalakirti, what do you think of this? And the response was thundering silence, because I'm not going to talk about what Zen is, but I'm only going to talk from a linguistic point of view about the word. We have it in Pali and Sanskrit. Sanskrit is still, anyone here who speaks Nepali, you know, if you say, Gyande, pay attention. Gyan is attention, it's concentration, and it's translated in numerous ways by different lexicographers and dictionaries, silent meditation, etc. And the word Dhyan, Zen, Japanese Zen, it is a concept, and if we look at what Buddhist scholars, how they define the term, it's also attention or concentration, or others say stage of meditation or stage of consciousness, because if we read the sutras, we know that there are 4 Zen, or depending on which sutras you are reading or which passages, there are 5 levels, ever higher of. Or, if you read those that are given very elaborate names, there are 8 or 9 levels, depending again on the count. So, that's what the term means in the sutras. Zen Buddhism spread in China. Of course, during the Tang dynasty, there was a suppression of Buddhism and a disruption of most of the monasteries and temples in China, and then it rebuilt again. That's what I mean. And then side by side within China, and it was during the Kamakura period when both tea culture and Zen were in their most sophisticated form that they were transferred to Japan. Tea arrived in Japan earlier. That's an elaborate story actually, but it arrived with full force at the time of Yosai, who brought both tea and Zen to Japan, and he propagated this connection with tea and Zen. Why will there be a connection between tea and Zen? This is Myoe. Of course, Yosai was at Kenninji in Kyoto that many of you will have visited. Myoe is in the north of Kyoto in another temple, and famously Yosai brought in a persimmon calyx 3 tea seeds to Japan from China and gave them to Myoe, and he planted a tea garden. It's still there in the north of Kyoto, the hills just north of Kyoto. And all the ways of drinking tea from the Song dynasty, they are preserved still in Japan with these types of glazes on the chawan. They have all different names. There are 5 different types of glazes. The powdered tea with the bamboo whisk and bamboo spoon. These are, this is the sophistication of the Song dynasty transplanted to Japan along with Zen Buddhism and then preserved in Japan. So, of course, afterwards the Mongols came. Now, what does this have to do with Buddhism? One of the things that we know from drinking tea or coffee is that it contains caffeine, which is a stimulant. And caffeine was first discovered by Friedrich Ferdinand Runge in Oranienburg. He isolated the chemical caffeine. And 1 year later in Europe, known better to us nowadays as Tartu in Estonia, Johann Emanuel Ferdinand von Giese, he also isolated, apparently independently, from coffee, caffeine. And then, 7 years later, Monsieur Audry in Paris again isolated in a laboratory caffeine. But he isolated it not from coffee this time, but from tea. So he named it theine in French, so theine. And then, 11 years later, Gerardus Johannes Mulder, a chemist in Rotterdam, showed that theine, the theine extracted by Monsieur Audry, and the caffeine extracted by all these other people, Runge and von Giese, that this was exactly the same chemical, same biochemical formula. And Karl Jobst, in September of that year, apparently independently, he claimed, also established that they were exactly the same thing. So caffeine, theine, it's the same thing. We know that we like this. We like it in the morning especially. And it does not harm us. But it harms some animals. If you happen to be a spider, and here's Peter Nicolas Witt in 1949 in Bern, administering different chemicals like LSD that had been discovered 6 years earlier in Basel in Switzerland, but also caffeine. And the worst effect of the spiders was not with LSD, but with caffeine. If you give this to a spider, his web doesn't turn out very good in the morning. So you don't give tea or coffee to a spider in the morning. It ruins his day. And so it may brighten up ours, but it doesn't. And of course, caffeine has a function in the tips of the buds of the leaves, where you have the most caffeine. That's where the plant is most sensitive and vulnerable. And that's exactly where the insects like to, and insects don't like caffeine. And of course, spiders are not insects, they're arachnids, but they also don't react well to caffeine. But if it only contained caffeine, then tea would be just like coffee, but it's not. There's another chemical that was discovered in 1949 in Japan by Sakato Yajiro, just a year after these experiments in Bern with LSD, the caffeine with the spiders. And this glutamic amino acid is very fascinating because you can buy it online, or you can, and some people professors at Harvard University take the pills, and you don't have to take the pills, you can just drink green tea. And they actually take it because it enhances concentration, and whereas caffeine, a lot of caffeine can get you jittery calms you down. It calms you down, but enhances concentration. So it sharpens, and another thing that it does, and you will have read neurophysiological studies of meditators with enhanced alpha wave activity, it chemically triggers alpha wave activity in the brain. So again, there is a connection with Zen meditation, and it improves overall cognitive function. So this is there. This is very present in tea, especially green tea. What is this? This is epigallocatechin gallate, and it's abbreviated EGCG, and it is found particularly in green tea. It's very much responsible for the astringency of green tea and for some of the taste and aroma, and it is an extremely beneficial compound for cognition, for clarity of thought, and it's also good for other things in the body. It has numerous other, but you can read that. There's an entire chapter in the book devoted to biochemistry, and it's not between the 1930s and the 1950s, chemists were not sure. They thought this might be a vitamin. They thought it might be necessary for human brains to function, and it's not. You can function without it, but you function better with it. So they named it vitamin P. So until the 1950s, this was named vitamin P. It's not vitamin P, it's not a vitamin at all, but it is very helpful, and it's not the only catechin contained in green tea. All of these catechins, this family of catechins, occur in green tea and enhance cognitive ability. And this is why you read in the abstract, in the 11th century, the Zen preceptor, still in China at that time, but by his Japanese name, I will call him by his Japanese name, Kengo Gonrin, he said Zen and tea have one and the same taste. He was not a biochemist, but he understood the effects of good green tea. And all of these chemicals are contained. And then some of you, if you come from a place like America or India or Europe, then most of the green tea that you'll find on the market is actually not very good. And no self-respecting Japanese or Chinese tea drinker would actually want to drink it at all. So many people who tell me I don't like green tea, I wonder if they've had good green tea. And then some people, even if they've had good green tea, like black tea or prefer black tea. This is what you find in black tea. These are theaflavins and theorubicins. So green tea is good for you, but black tea is also good for you. These are actually the products, the catechins that you saw, they are transformed over time and by the oxidation process into these compounds. And this is just a few of the various chemical structures of theaflavins and theorubicins that you'll find in black tea, but they're also good. Maybe not as good for cognitive ability, but for the heart, diabetes, etc. So black tea is also good for you. And there's much more to tell, but there are other speakers. What did I do? Oh, I'm trying to get to the last slide, which just only says thank you. That's all. But I can say